Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, and today we're going back to Shadow Priest, my favorite. This video is gonna be about the recently buffed Prism legendary, which I'm sure you've all heard about, or you've seen Shadow Priest do a bunch of damage with it and you were wondering what the hell is this. Anyway, now that I've had a good opportunity to test this legendary for myself, I will be able to give you a good analysis on this legendary, its weaknesses and strengths from both a raiding and a dungeoning perspective. We're gonna cover a few builds and the best way to use this legendary, but before we start, if you do like this video, make sure you like, subscribe and hit that bell button. It really helps the channel grow. Thanks a bunch. Anyway, here's the vid and I hope you enjoy.
The shadows will take you.
Alright, so let's have a look at talents. This legendary allows for some variety when it comes to talents, allowing you to try multiple builds. Generally speaking, there is one build per boss when it comes to specific raid bosses, unlike dungeons where you can really go wild as build goes with this legendary. First row, strictly speaking, both Fortress of the Mind and Death and Madness work. Fortress of the Mind being more of the main choice here since it gives you more priority damage and single target damage, so it's a perfect choice for raiding and for push keys as it gives the player more reliability when it comes to killing the Pride affix for example and priority adds in dungeons. Death and Madness is more of a niche choice but can be quite huge with this legendary. The reason being is that it procs the legendary every time you use Shadow Word Death, so therefore does incredible damage every time you execute, which this talent is perfect for, as it resets the cooldown on execute every time the target you use your execute on dies. Second row does not change from my last video, Body and Soul being the main choice, but go with what you feel comfortable with. Just make sure you use the talent you choose. That is the most important thing on this row. Third talent row. All three options see play in different scenarios. Twist of Fate is more of a Sludge Fist, pure single target choice, although it's also a go-to on bosses like Huntsman and Enerva. Both have some adds, technically, but this talent just pushes through. Misery is the talent that will see the most play in this row, with the legendary in mind of course, giving us an easier time while dotting targets and setting up for a burst. Generally speaking, it is the go-to choice when it comes to non-single target or 6+ packs, where Searing Madness takes the spotlight. Fourth row is still the same, with Last Word and Psychic Aura being good choices and more dependent on what the raid boss fight demands, or the comp you're running in the dungeons. Fifth row is where we see choices being available. When it comes to solid single target and insane insanity generation, Auspicious Spirits just rules. It's completely crazy, you can reach very high burst damage, be it in raids or in dungeons, allowing you to do some insane priority damage or just to nuke bosses down. Shadow Crash is also a very viable option, as the AoE damage can be impressive while your Mind Blast and Shadow Word Death are on CD, since those two are the only ways to proc your legendary to do actual damage with it. Sixth row. There is not really any choice but to take Mindbender while running this legendary. Not only does it upgrade your Shadow Fiend, but most of all it reduces the cooldown by an additional 2 minutes, making it a 1 minute CD. The others on this row just do not compete, especially when we're using this legendary. It just makes this legendary viable to begin with. Last row is where we see something out of the ordinary specifically. Although Hungering Void is the main raiding option and a strong dungeon choice as well, it's worth mentioning that Ancient Madness can be insane with this legendary, as your burst damage just goes over the roof when it comes to dungeons, nuking packs in seconds. So I would really recommend you try it out. First of all, let's talk strengths of this recently buffed legendary, Shadowflame Prism. The primordial thing to keep in mind is that this legendary is now affected by your mastery, which means the damage it deals when you are in void form is quite larger than it was before it got buffed. To recap on our mastery, Shadow Weaving, damage is increased the more dots we have on a target. A quick example would be I have 10% mastery on my character, then I have 3 dots on the target, my damage is increased by 30% on that target currently. When I'm in Void form, I don't need the dots to benefit from my mastery, meaning the legendary deals the highest damage it can without needing any dots on the target. The damage increase is quite solid as the damage is direct and it's also an AoE that affects up to 6 targets, which is great for a bunch of dungeons, including the target you used Mind Blast and Shadow Word Death on. However, this legendary has 2 weaknesses, the first of which is that it's AoE capped, changing some of your priorities when bursting a big pack in DOS for example. Another weakness would be that the legendary is affected by a CD of Mindbender, being 1 minute. When Mindbender is not up, your legendary doesn't really do much aside for give you the basic stats it has on the item. But generally speaking, this legendary is overall the better option in dungeons, although Stratagem and Sun Twin remain 2 very solid options. When it comes to raiding, it competes with Stratagem, and generally they reach about the same DPS done. The key thing to remember are the priorities on the fight you're progressing. If you need more single target on Saya Mythic, for example, or on Slush Fist, well, you might want to consider other legendaries. But generally speaking, I've tried Prism on a bunch of fights, and Prism has done very well and has not disappointed me. Even in single target, it is still very compatible. Alright, in this section I'll be talking about some tips and tricks I learned from playing this legendary. It's mostly around playing with the timers, to be quite honest with you. Now, before I start, I want to point out that Night Fae players will get a better result with this legendary, as most of our Mindbender windows will also have Void Form with it. I would recommend playing Night Fae if you're looking to have the maximum impact with this legendary. That aside, a key trick to using this legendary is to use Mindbender and Mind Blast before you enter Void form, if you have it off cooldown that is, as it will give you an extra Mind Blast and therefore more damage during your Void form windows. Something that is also worth mentioning is using Shadow Word Death as a filler while your Mindbender is active, as it will extend its duration and also do a bunch of damage. A longer duration on Mindbender also means more insanity generated and therefore a good filler when your Void Bolt, Mind Blast and Devouring Blade are not available, leaving only Mind Flay as an option. Generally speaking, the goal with this legendary is to use as many Mind Blasts and Shadow Word Deaths as possible, rewarding you with higher uptime on Mindbender, which will provide more insanity and therefore more damage on the board. Lastly, a small but important trick I learned while trying different builds is that if you are running the Ancient Madness talent, it is also worth considering switching your Dissonant Echoes potency conduit with Mind Devourer, as you won't be getting much value out of Dissonant Echoes if you're not running Hungering Void talent. Haunting Apparition generally is still a great choice, and you should keep it unless you want to sacrifice it for an extra endurance conduit. Anyway, I think I've been going on for long enough, so I'll stop here. Once again, thanks a bunch for watching, and if you have any recommendations or you want me to improve my videos somehow, feel free to let me know in the comment section down below. I'll see you around, guys. See ya!